When I won the lottery, my parents wanted to take it away to fund their golden child's future, ruining mine in the process. When I refused, they kicked me out. But karma had different plans. From the moment I was old enough to understand the concept of fairness, it was clear that in our household, fairness was a flexible term, heavily skewed in favor of my younger sister, Jennifer. It wasn't that our parents were mean or neglectful toward me, it's just that Jennifer, with her bubbly charm and endless demands, seemed to capture all their attention and resources. As kids, our rooms told the first part of the story. Jennifer's room was painted her favorite shade of pink the moment she declared it her favorite color, adorned with posters of her favorite pop stars and shelves overflowing with toys and books. Mine remained the dull beige it had been since we moved in, with furniture that was functional but definitely had seen better days. If I wanted something, the answer was usually "we'll see," which often translated to "probably not." This trend of favoritism wasn't just confined to material things. It extended into how our achievements and milestones were celebrated. I remember my 10th birthday vividly. I had been really into art at the time, spending hours drawing and coloring. I thought maybe just this once my passion would be acknowledged. Instead, I received a pack of generic colored pencils. Fast forward 2 years, and Jennifer's 10th birthday was an extravagant affair with pony rides and a custom cake shaped like a castle. Everything a kid could dream of and more. School was no different. I was a decent student, always trying my best to bring home good grades, hoping that maybe this would be the thing that would get me a bit of the praise Jennifer seemed to get so effortlessly. I made the honor roll several times in high school, each time rushing home with the certificate, hoping for a reaction that amounted to more than an indifferent "that's nice." But when Jennifer got a B+ on a test, it was as if she had won a Nobel Prize. They even took her out for a fancy dinner to celebrate, something that never happened with my academic achievements. As we grew older, the material and emotional discrepancies grew even starker. High school graduation is supposed to be a big deal for every teenager, right? When I graduated, I got a handshake from Dad and a card with $50 from Mom, which was nice but pretty underwhelming. It felt like a pat on the back rather than a celebration of years of hard work. But when it was Jennifer's turn to graduate, the whole 9 yards rolled out. A brand new car waited for her in the driveway, complete with a big red bow. That night, they threw a party that felt more like a royal banquet. Relatives I hadn't seen in years showed up, and there was so much food and laughter, the kind that had been absent during my own graduation. Living under this constant shadow of indifference, I started to feel like maybe I was the problem. Maybe there was something inherently unlovable about me, or perhaps I just wasn't meant to succeed. These thoughts took a toll, and I found myself grappling with anxiety and depression. No amount of personal achievement seemed to bridge the gap between how our parents treated Jennifer and me. It wasn't just the material things. I could get over not having the newest gadgets or designer clothes. But the emotional disparity was debilitating. I felt unseen, unheard, and fundamentally inadequate. When I found a good job that was paying good money, I broke the news to my parents. Their reaction was predictably practical. They didn't ask if I had found a nice place or if I was excited about this new chapter in my life. Instead, they saw it as a financial opportunity for themselves, immediately suggesting that I should start saving up for Jennifer's future wedding, despite her not even being in a relationship. It was always about her, about preparing for her needs and wants. They seemed to view my income as another resource to be allocated for Jennifer's benefit. I tried to protest, to explain that I had my own life and financial goals to consider. Their response was a mix of disappointment and disbelief. How could I be so selfish? Wasn't family supposed to come first? The guilt was immense. Years of being conditioned to put Jennifer first made it incredibly hard to advocate for myself. But deep down, I knew that if I didn't start setting boundaries now, I would never be able to lead the life I wanted. So I made a plan. I would contribute a small amount to this hypothetical wedding fund to keep the peace, but I would also start saving secretly for my own dreams. I had always wanted to start my own business, a niche apparel company for little girls, focusing on frocks and dresses. It was a dream I had harbored for years, and with my new job, I finally had a chance to make it a reality. If only I could navigate the financial and emotional minefields that came with my family dynamics. As much as I'd like to say things got better as Jennifer and I got older, that just wouldn't be true. The favoritism that marked our childhood only seemed to intensify with each passing year, especially as we moved into those big milestone moments that every family likes to celebrate. But in our house, some celebrations were more equal than others. Jennifer's Sweet 16 was a spectacle right out of a movie. Our backyard transformed into a fairy tale garden with twinkling lights strung from every possible point, a DJ blasting the latest hits, and a buffet spread that could feed an army. Friends, family, and practically half the school turned out for what had been dubbed the event of the year. I remember watching her blow out the candles on her massive 3-tiered birthday cake, surrounded by a crowd of adoring guests. It was her moment, her day. Everyone said so, and they weren't wrong. 2 years earlier, my own 16th had passed with considerably less fanfare. I got a happy birthday in the morning, a pat on the back from Dad, and a new book. Don't get me wrong, I love to read, and it was a good book. But there was no party, no gathering of friends and family. It was just another day in the life of the less favored child. I remember feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. Relieved because I didn't have to face the potential embarrassment of a poorly attended party, but disappointed because, well, it would have been nice to feel special, even just for a day. The pattern repeated itself when it came time for college decisions. I had applied to a few places and got accepted into a decent state school. I was proud of myself, considering I managed the application process on my own without much guidance. When I told my parents, they nodded and offered a tepid, "Congratulations." That was the extent of it. There was no celebration, no family dinner out. I was expected to figure out the logistics and finances on my own, which I did, by taking on more hours at my part-time job and securing a small loan. Jennifer's college acceptance, however, was a different story entirely. She applied to one of the most prestigious private universities in the country, her dream school. When the acceptance letter arrived, it was as if she had single-handedly cured a global pandemic. The celebrations were immediate and extravagant. My parents threw a huge party, the same day the letter came, with champagne and a fancy cake proclaiming, "Congratulations, Jennifer." Relatives I hadn't seen since Jennifer's sweet 16 poured into our house, bringing gifts and praising her achievement as though she had leapt over the moon. Throughout the party, I stood on the sidelines, watching the spectacle and feeling like a ghost in my own home. No one asked about my plans, my college, or how I felt. It was all about Jennifer, always about Jennifer. I remember retreating to my room early that evening, feeling a familiar sting of tears that I quickly wiped away. It wasn't just the lack of attention that hurt. It was the profound sense of isolation within my own family, the unshakable feeling of being perpetually second best, no matter what I did. College life offered me the anonymity and fresh start I craved. Here no one knew Jennifer, and I wasn't overshadowed by her accomplishments. I made friends, joined clubs, and even started dating a little. For the first time, I felt like I was more than just Jennifer's older sibling. I was my own person, with my own interests and ambitions. Despite the newfound freedom and personal growth, the inequity at home never fully left my mind. Each phone call with my parents somehow looped back to Jennifer's college experiences, her new friends, and the exciting opportunities she was exploring. My own updates were met with polite but disengaged responses. It was clear that my college adventures, no matter how enriching or successful, would never hold the same weight. Navigating this dynamic was a balancing act. On one hand, I wanted to pull away, to shield myself from the constant comparisons and disappointments. On the other, I still longed for my parents' approval and love, as elusive as they seemed. This internal conflict was a constant companion throughout my college years, a reminder of the complicated family ties that bound me, even as I tried to stand on my own. As graduation neared, I braced myself for another round of unequal celebrations. I planned a small dinner with friends to mark the occasion, knowing better than to expect any grand gestures from home. It was bittersweet, acknowledging how far I had come despite the lack of support, but also realizing that in my parents' eyes, I might never measure up to Jennifer, no matter what I achieved. But I was learning, slowly and painfully, that perhaps I didn't need to. After graduation, the real world hit me like a ton of bricks. I was armed with a degree and a boatload of ambition, but also the stark realization that I was pretty much on my own. My parents had made it clear during college that they expected me to be self-sufficient, which was fair to a degree. I didn't mind the independence. In fact, I craved it after years of living in Jennifer's shadow. But what I hadn't anticipated was the weight of financial expectations they would place on me, not for my own future, but for Jennifer's. I landed my first real job about 3 months after graduation. It wasn't glamorous, just a basic entry-level position at a local marketing firm. But it was a foot in the door, and I was determined to work my way up. The pay was decent, I was proud of myself, managing to scrape together a living without leaning on anyone else. When I first told my parents about the job, I hoped for some kind of acknowledgement, maybe even a hint of pride. Instead, their reaction was muted, almost as if they expected more. "That's nice, dear," was the extent of their enthusiasm. There was no congratulatory dinner, no celebratory phone calls, just a brief acknowledgement before the conversation shifted back to Jennifer, as it always did. Jennifer was still in college at the time, living it up at her fancy private university, her expenses fully covered by my parents. She called me occasionally, mostly to brag about her social life or complain about her workload. I listened, offered advice, and bit back the envy that gnawed at me whenever I hung up the phone. About a year into my job, something shifted at home. My parents started hinting about financial contributions, specifically how I should start thinking about helping out with Jennifer's future expenses. At first it was subtle, just offhand comments about how expensive Jennifer's senior year was going to be, or the cost of living in the city where she wanted to intern. But then the hints became requests, and the requests became demands. One evening, during one of our dinners that actually involved a two-way conversation, my mom laid it out plainly. "You know, Tom, now that you're working and all, we were thinking it might be nice if you could start setting aside some money for Jennifer's graduation, maybe help out with her student loans when the time comes." I was taken aback. "Mom, I'm just getting started myself. I have loans too, and rent, and—" "But you're the older sibling," she interrupted, her tone firm. "It's your responsibility to help out. We've put so much into Jennifer's education, it wouldn't be fair for you not to contribute." The notion baffled me. Fair? What about all the years of imbalance, of celebrations for Jennifer's every minor achievement, while my milestones passed without fanfare? What about the fact that I had struggled through college financially, while Jennifer had everything handed to her on a silver platter? I tried to voice my thoughts, to explain how this expectation felt unfair and one-sided, but as usual, my concerns were brushed off. "You're being too sensitive," my dad chimed in. "We're just asking for a little family support here." The conversation left me reeling. I was frustrated, hurt, and angry. I had worked hard to establish my independence, to prove that I could make it on my own, and now they were asking me to hand over my hard-earned money to support the golden child, the sister who had never once had to worry about money or make any real sacrifices. Despite my resistance, the pressure didn't let up. Over the next few months, every call seemed to include some mention of my financial obligations to Jennifer. When I received a modest raise at work, my parents saw it as an opportunity for me to increase my contributions to Jennifer's fund. It was as if my own financial goals and responsibilities didn't matter, as if my sole purpose was to ensure Jennifer's comfort and success. Feeling cornered and obligated, I agreed to a small monthly contribution. It wasn't much, but it was what I could spare without jeopardizing my own financial stability. I hoped this would appease my parents and put an end to the constant badgering. But internally, I felt a deep resentment building, not just toward my parents, but toward Jennifer as well, even though I knew it wasn't entirely her fault. This financial strain added a new layer of tension to our already complicated family dynamics. I felt like I was being used, like my own aspirations and needs were secondary to Jennifer's. It wasn't just about money. It was about the fundamental lack of fairness that had colored my relationship with my parents my entire life. I was always the afterthought, the backup plan, never the priority. The situation forced me to reevaluate my relationship with my family. I began to pull back, to protect my own mental and emotional well-being. I still attended family gatherings and maintained a surface-level relationship with my parents and Jennifer, but I kept my personal life and my finances closely guarded. Life has a funny way of throwing you a lifeline just when you think you're about to sink. For me, that lifeline came in the form of a $500,000 lottery win, a stroke of luck so unexpected it felt like I had stepped into an alternate reality. But as thrilling as it was to suddenly have $500,000 in my bank account, this windfall also brought a new set of challenges, particularly with my family. I found out I had won on a Tuesday evening. I remember staring at the lottery website, refreshing the page over and over again, unable to believe my eyes. The numbers matched perfectly. I had actually won. After years of scraping by, of budgeting every dollar and feeling like I was always on the financial back foot, this was a game changer. I didn't tell anyone at first. I spent a sleepless night thinking about all the things I could do with the money. I thought about paying off my student loans, investing in some real estate, maybe even taking a trip to Europe. Something I'd always dreamed of but never thought possible. But above all, I thought about my business idea, a niche apparel company for little girls. It was a dream I had harbored for years, something I was truly passionate about, but had never had the resources to pursue. A few days later, after I had confirmed the win with the lottery office and set up an appointment with a financial advisor, I decided it was time to tell my family. I knew this would be a delicate conversation, given our complicated history and the ongoing tensions over money. I called a family meeting. After dessert, I finally broke the news. "I won the lottery," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. $500,000. The reaction was immediate and intense. My parents stared at me, mouths agape, while Jennifer squealed with excitement. For a moment, there was a buzz of congratulations, hugs, and laughter. It felt good to share the news, to see their genuine happiness for me. But then, as the initial shock wore off, the conversation took a predictable turn. "That's incredible, Tom. You know, this could really help with Jennifer's grad school," my mom said, her tone hopeful, almost expectant. "Yeah," my dad chimed in. "Think about what this could mean for her future. You could fully fund her education abroad. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I felt my stomach knot. This was exactly what I had feared. The money had barely settled in my account, and already they were making plans for it, plans that had nothing to do with my dreams or needs. "I've actually been thinking about that," I said, drawing a deep breath. "I'm planning to use the money to start my own business. It's something I've always wanted to do, and now I finally have the chance." The room went quiet. My parents exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from excitement to confusion, and then to disappointment. "But what about Jennifer?" my mom asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Don't you think helping your sister should be your priority?" I could feel the old guilt creeping in, the familiar pressure to put Jennifer's needs above my own. But this time, something was different. This time, I had the means to change my own life, to pursue my own happiness. I wasn't going to give that up, not again. "I love Jennifer and I want the best for her," I said firmly. "But I need to think about my own future too. I've been putting her needs ahead of mine for most of our lives. Now I need to use this opportunity for myself." The conversation that followed was difficult. My parents argued that as the older sibling, it was my duty to support Jennifer. They said I was being selfish, that family should come first. The same old lines, the same old guilt trips. But I stood my ground. For the first time, I felt like I had the power to make my own decisions, to define my own priorities. It wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, about finally being seen as an individual with my own goals and dreams. They insisted that I needed to hand over all the money so they could send Jennifer to an elite graduate program abroad. Apparently, she'd always dreamed of studying in Europe, and this was my chance to make it happen. I was stunned. Here I was with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change my life, and they expected me to just give it all away to fund my sister's whims. When I told them I planned to use the money to start my business, they flew into a rage. They called me selfish and ungrateful. They said I was a terrible son and brother for not putting family first. According to them, I owed it to Jennifer to fund her dreams, since our parents had sacrificed everything for us growing up. I stood my ground and refused to give them the money. I explained that I had my own goals and aspirations that were just as valid as Jennifer's, but they wouldn't hear it. They gave me an ultimatum: either hand over the lottery winnings or move out immediately. It was a hard decision, but I chose to leave. I packed up my things and found a small apartment across town. My parents and sister haven't spoken to me since. Sometimes I feel guilty and wonder if I did the right thing. But another part of me feels free for the first time in my life. Edit. Wow, I wasn't expecting this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for the supportive comments and advice. I've read through everything and appreciate the perspective. I'll post an update soon with some more details on how things have progressed. Update 1. It's been about 3 months since my original post and a lot has happened. I wanted to give an update on the situation with my family and my plans going forward. After moving out of my parents' house, I threw myself into my work. I was determined to save as much money as possible to get my business off the ground, but I also wanted to prove to myself that I could succeed on my own terms. About a month after I left, my parents reached out to me. I was hopeful at first that they wanted to reconcile, but it quickly became clear they had an agenda. They started by saying they missed me and wanted to make amends. Then they dropped the real reason for the call. Apparently, Jennifer had been accepted into her dream graduate program at a prestigious university in London. My parents were thrilled, of course, but there was a catch. The tuition and living expenses were astronomical. They didn't have nearly enough saved up to cover it. That's where I came in. They wanted me to loan them a large portion of my lottery winnings to fund Jennifer's education. They promised they'd pay me back eventually, but I knew that was unlikely to happen. When I hesitated, they laid on the guilt trip thick. They talked about how this was Jennifer's one shot at her dreams, how she'd be devastated if she couldn't go, how I'd be ruining her future if I didn't help. I stood firm and told them no. I explained again that I was using that money to start my own business. They got angry and accused me of being selfish again. My mom actually said, "I guess the money has changed you. You used to care about your family." That really stung. I've always cared about my family, even when they didn't seem to care much about me. But I realized in that moment that nothing I ever did would be enough for them. I'd always be the bad guy in their eyes unless I gave them everything they wanted. So I made a decision. I told them that I was done being their ATM, that I loved them, but I needed to put myself first for once, and that if they couldn't respect my choices, then maybe we needed some time apart. They didn't take it well. There was a lot of yelling and crying. My dad said I was dead to him if I didn't help Jennifer. In the end, I had to hang up on them mid-tirade. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. After that call, I blocked their numbers for a while. I needed space to process everything and focus on my goals. I threw myself into planning my business launch. I did tons of research, networked with other entrepreneurs, and started putting together a solid business plan. About a month ago, I took the plunge and quit my day job to focus on my company full-time. It was scary, but also exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly in control of my future. I've spent the last few weeks setting up my workshop and getting everything in order. I've hired a few part-time seamstresses to help with production. We're starting small with an online store, but I have plans to expand into brick-and-mortar locations if things go well. My first collection of girls' frocks and dresses is almost ready to launch. I'm nervous, but excited to see how they're received. I've put my heart and soul into every design, and I truly believe in the quality of our products throughout this process. I've had moments of doubt, times where I wondered if I was making a huge mistake. But then I remind myself of how far I've come and how much happier I am now that I'm living life on my own terms. I still haven't heard from my parents or Jennifer. Part of me misses them and wishes things could be different. But another part of me feels lighter and freer than I have in years. I'm learning to be okay with the distance and focusing on building the life I want. So that's where things stand now. I'm about to launch my dream business and start a new chapter in my life. I'm nervous but optimistic about the future. Thank you all again for your support and encouragement. It really helped give me the strength to stand my ground and pursue my goals. I'll post another update down the road to let you know how the business launch goes and if there are any new developments with my family. Wish me luck. Update 2. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some major developments that have happened recently. First, some good news. My apparel business has really taken off. Our online store has been doing great with steady sales and lots of repeat customers. The frocks and dresses have been a hit, especially our line of matching sibling outfits. We've even had a few of our designs featured in some popular parenting blogs. About 2 months ago, I took a big leap and opened a small brick-and-mortar boutique. It was nerve-wracking, but it's been doing well so far. There's something really special about seeing little girls try on our dresses in person and twirl around the store. It makes all the hard work feel worth it. I've been working long hours, but I love what I'm doing. For the first time in my life, I feel truly fulfilled and proud of my accomplishments. And the best part is, I did it all on my own terms. Now, for the not-so-good news. Last week, I got an unexpected call from my parents. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. As soon as I picked up, I could tell something was wrong. My mom was crying, and my dad sounded more subdued than I'd ever heard him. They told me that Jennifer had gotten into some serious trouble. Apparently, she'd been working part-time at a local boutique while applying to grad schools. My parents had been supporting her financially, but it wasn't enough to fund her lavish lifestyle, so Jennifer had started stealing money from the cash register at work. She'd gotten away with it for a while, but she finally got caught red-handed trying to pocket some cash. The store owner called the police and Jennifer was arrested. My parents were frantic. They didn't have enough money for bail, let alone a lawyer. They were calling to ask, or rather beg, for my help. They needed several $1,000s to get Jennifer out of jail and start building her legal defense. I was conflicted. On one hand, I was still hurt by how they treated me. A part of me wanted to tell them they'd made their bed and now they had to lie in it. But on the other hand, I knew jail could be a dangerous place, especially for a young woman. After thinking it over, I decided to help. But on my terms, I agreed to pay Jennifer's bail. But I made it clear this was a one-time thing. I told my parents I'd transfer the money directly to the bail bondsman, not to them. And I made it clear that this didn't mean I was opening my wallet for them whenever they wanted. They were grateful, albeit a bit taken aback by my conditions. For once, they didn't argue or try to guilt me into giving more. I think the gravity of the situation had finally made them realize they couldn't keep taking me for granted. After Jennifer was released, my parents called again. This time, their tone was different. They actually apologized for how they'd treated me over the years. They said seeing me succeed with my business while Jennifer floundered had opened their eyes to how unfair they'd been. They asked if I'd consider moving back home, saying they missed me and wanted to make amends. I was touched but wary. I told them I appreciated the apology, but that I was happy living independently. I suggested we start with small steps, maybe a family dinner once a month to rebuild our relationship slowly. They agreed, seeming to understand that they couldn't just expect things to go back to normal overnight. We've had 2 dinners so far, and while things are still a bit awkward, it feels like we're making progress. As for Jennifer, she's facing some serious charges. My parents are scrambling to find her a good lawyer. They haven't asked me for more money, which I appreciate. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for her to get her act together. So that's where things stand now. My business is thriving. I'm cautiously rebuilding my relationship with my family, and I'm feeling more confident and self-assured than ever before. It hasn't been an easy road, but I'm proud of how far I've come. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. Your encouragement really helped me stay strong and stick to my convictions. I'm excited to see what the future holds.